Capitol Report is a production of Senate Media Services.
On this week's program, we introduce you to the newly elected leaders for the Senate's Republican and DFL caucuses. Plus, Governor Walz creates a new council on economic expansion and a look at the historic Supreme Court chamber. Stay tuned for this week's Capitol Report. Welcome to this week's program. I'm Shannon Loehrke. Last week, the Senate Republican caucus elected a new leader. Joining me to talk about his new role is the former Senate President and now Senate Majority Leader, Senator Jeremy Miller. Welcome.
Thank you, Shannon. Happy to be here.
First of all, congratulations on your election to lead the Republican caucus. You joked to the press last week that your wife asked you, why do you even want the job? So my first question is, why did you want the job, and why do you think your colleagues chose you?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me on today. It's truly an honor to be selected as the next majority leader of the Minnesota Senate. The reason I ran for the Senate is because I wanted to help make a difference, and that's the same exact reason why I want to be Senate Majority Leader. I want to work together with folks in both chambers across the aisle and the governor to really get good things done for the people of the state of Minnesota. That's my priority. That's the priority of the Senate Republican caucus.
And speaking of working across the aisle, in 2013, you and Roger Reinert, a DFLer from Duluth, got together to form the Purple Caucus, and the effort was to advance legislation that both parties could agree to. So with that in mind, as Majority Leader, your job is to promote your caucus's, point of view and agenda. So is there a shift in your thinking? How are you thinking about those two different ideas?
Sure. Again, for me, it's all about working together and getting good things done for the people of the state of Minnesota. Back in 2013, Senator Reinert and I were sitting together in a committee meeting, and there was a discussion going on with a lot of disagreement, and we both leaned back in our chairs and said, there has to be a better way to do this. And it's not necessarily being more conservative or more liberal or giving up on your principles. I'm a conservative guy. I have conservative principles. I'm going to work toward conservative solutions for the people of the state of Minnesota. But when disagreements arise, you can either approach those disagreements in a respectful way or in a divisive way. And what I'm going to really try to do, and what Senate Republicans are focused on doing, is let's get through those disagreements in a respectful manner, and let's work towards an outcome that's really in the positive view, what's most positive for the people of the state of Minnesota, and that's what we're going to be working towards.
You are a new leader now for the Senate Republican caucus, and just last night, the DFL caucus elected Melisa López Franzen as their caucus leader. She's the first member of the People of Color and Indigenous Caucus to lead an entire caucus in the Minnesota Senate. You are, if I'm not mistaken, the first majority leader in Minnesota history to be of the Jewish faith. Both of you are parents to young children. Are we witnessing the passing of the baton from the baby boomer generation to this new, younger, and more family-involved generation? And and how much of that has to do with the increasing diversity in the state of Minnesota?
So Senator Franzen and I have a good relationship. I expect that working relationship to continue as we each lead our caucuses. Whether or not it's passing the baton, I think it might be too early to say, but I do think it's an opportunity for us to try to get more more younger people involved in politics. It's so incredibly important for us to get more and more people involved, and hopefully this helps lead to getting more Minnesotans involved in the process.
This week, Governor Walz announced the creation of a Governor's Council on Economic Expansion. The state does appear to be in the midst of a labor shortage across many industries, including childcare, retail, construction, skilled workers. What is your view on what's needed for Minnesota's economy to grow and recover coming out of the pandemic?
Sure. I'm not familiar with the governor's new council, but what I am familiar with and what I'm a huge advocate for are public-private partnerships. I think it's incredibly important for our industries to be working together with our higher education institutions, especially the technical colleges throughout the state, which usually can adapt a little bit more quickly to meet the needs of the workforce. And another thing I believe that we need to do both at the state level and especially at the federal level is provide incentives for people to get back to work rather than providing incentives for people not to work.
Okay. At last week's press conference, you mentioned that the Republican caucus is increasingly concerned about rising crime rates all across Minnesota. This legislative session, this coming one, is still a ways off, but I wonder what kinds of legislative changes could potentially be put in place that would thwart increasing criminal activity.
Sure. Well, in my view, one of the fundamental responsibilities of our government is public safety. And seeing the increasing crime rates across the state is very, very concerning. Senate Republicans are committed to working together with stakeholders, including law enforcement, to provide them the support that they need to hold non-law abiding citizens accountable for their actions. So we're going to do whatever we can to really work together with law enforcement and improve on those increasing crime rates and really provide them the support that they need to keep our communities safe.
Now that you've had almost a week to settle into this new role, are there any other issues or concerns that are rising to the top that are sort of bubbling to the surface that will probably come up in the next legislative session? What are you hearing?
Sure. So I think the first priority is getting to a special session agreement as far as the frontline worker bonus pay. Senate Republicans are committed to working towards an agreement there to make sure that those funds are distributed in a timely manner.
Is that getting closer as far as you know?
As far as I know, they're close to an agreement, and we want to make sure that those resources that were passed by the legislature in a bipartisan manner get distributed as quickly as possible to those who were on the front line during this pandemic. So that's incredibly important. Of course, redistricting and bonding will be two topics of discussion during the next legislative session, but really public safety, I think, is going to be a top priority for the Senate Republicans going into the 2022 legislative session.
Finally, you were president of the Senate, presiding over floor sessions since 2019, occasionally tossing the gavel in the air and catching it again. It really seemed that you enjoyed that position. So I wonder what you really enjoyed about it, and will you miss it?
Presiding over the Senate as Senate President was certainly one of the highlights of my career. I've enjoyed that position a great deal, and it's sort of bittersweet to give up that role and move into the role of Senate Majority Leader, but I'm ready for the next challenge, and again, looking forward to working together toward solutions that are good for the people of the state of Minnesota.
Senate Majority Leader Jeremy Miller, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
This week, Governor Tim Walz announced the creation of a new Governor's Council on Economic Expansion.
They will create a set of recommendations for the state and recommendations for business that we can work on, and the state will have some of the responsibility, the private sector will have their responsibility, but how to make sure we're aligning those goals to build that resilient, growing economy. Once again, Minnesota is in the top 10 in terms of lowest unemployment rates and a lot of these other numbers that indicate we have an incredibly high quality of life. No one in this group and no one in Minnesota is glossing over some of those spots we're going to have to continue to work on. And that mismatch of workforce to openings is one that we have to make sure that we're tackling. Quality of life issues, making sure that our schools serve all students and serve all students to the highest quality. Making sure that we can have a sophisticated and effective conversation on public safety that serves everyone. So my hope is just like these other councils and commissions we put together, that we surround this administration with the best and brightest minds with the ideas that can make a difference in Minnesota, and now looking at this economic expansion that is on the horizon to make sure Minnesota is positioned, which I think many of us know, a great place to live, a great place to raise a family, and a great place to start and continue businesses.
We stand at a really unprecedented moment for the state of Minnesota. With this huge influx of federal dollars coming into the state, with a whole host of challenges that are going to define this next chapter of our economy, the decisions that leaders in Minnesota make over the next 6 to 8 months are really going to affect Minnesotans for generations to come. So we really feel the urgency of this moment, and because of that, want to pull together a group of leaders really to give us that sense of how they see their view of the world and Minnesota's economy and how we can make it better. This pandemic has obviously brought about numerous disruptions in our economy, and it's laid bare so many challenges that we have got to tackle as business and government in Minnesota. The deep racial disparities that exist in our economy cannot be ignored. We know we need to do way different number of things to take on that challenge than we have in the past. The mismatch between employers and workers and the power balance there that's shifting under our feet is a major issue for workers and businesses to figure out, and government has to play a role in that as well. And then the intense competition for talent right now, and for new businesses and for startups like the ones that are based here in Osborne 370. We have got to make Minnesota the kind of state where, as COVID has shown, anybody can choose where they live and where they work now, that people want to come and build businesses here.
At the Department of Human Services, we serve roughly 1 in 5 Minnesotans from all walks of life across the state. We've seen how the economic roller coaster of the last year and a half has hit them hard. Child care providers, for example, large and small, have been on the front lines, keeping our economy strong, providing the needed infrastructure to allow parents, grandparents, and others the chance to go to work, have weathered quarantine, safety protocols, and staffing shortages. And we know the strength of our child care system going forward as a basic building block for economic expansion.
The same way that we are seeing the workforce change, we are also seeing the need to recruit and retain more workers who are able to care for our children. Full disclosure, we are in my family right now, we are on a waiting list for childcare in our own community because there aren't enough workers. So we are being flexible and trying to figure out with work schedules and for parents how we're making all of this work, like so many families across the state. But what I do know is that through the work of Commissioner Harpstead and Commissioner Grove, as we're also trying to figure out how to start more child care centers, more in-home child care, remove barriers, but also let folks know that we want to create viable business opportunities for folks to go into this field. And that is really informed by having conversations with providers across the state, knowing that we have to partner with businesses and the workforce. I can't tell you how often we travel across the state and hear consistently about the issue of childcare and the issue of housing as being barriers for businesses that want to expand.
This week, the Senate DFL caucus elected a new leader. Joining me to talk about her new role as Senate Minority Leader is Senator Melisa López Franzen. Welcome.
Thank you, Shannon.
First, congratulations are in order, and you are the first member of the Posse Caucus, the People of Color and Indigenous Caucus, and in fact, the first non-Caucasian person to achieve a top leadership role in the Senate. At Tuesday's press conference, when I asked you about this, you said, "It's about time." What did you mean?
Well, we know that our growing population in the communities of color all over the country, not just Minnesota, is happening exponentially, and we are ready to lead. We've been leading in business ownership, we've been leading in entrepreneurship, and now we just need to be immersed in the political sphere. So I think it's very important to have people like me in a position of power where we can actually see where we can end up if we take that opportunity to run for office. So I'm excited to be in this role and to hopefully inspire people to run for office and step up in their political game.
You were born and raised in Puerto Rico. You came to Minnesota for the Humphrey School of Public Affairs. Then you later received a law degree from Hamline University. You were elected to the Senate in 2012, and you own a small business. What was your pitch to your colleagues as to why you should become their leader?
Well, Shannon, I know a lot of members knew that I flipped a district from red to blue in Senate District 49 back in 2012. I worked really hard, campaigned really hard and fundraised, and they knew that I not only did that back then, but I continued to do that and perform for our caucus. So they know my values and ethics of hard work, and I'm bringing that as something that is really important in this election, to really be present, to show up, to do the hard work, and to also try to merge ideas and sort of being a mediator to a certain extent. I'm a lawyer by trade. I can argue both sides, so I like to see both sides of a coin and be able to try to get to some consensus on issues, and our caucus is really wanting people to step up for that game.
According to census data, Minnesota's population growth is fully attributable to growth in the BIPOC, the Black, Indigenous, people of color population. The DFL has struggled to win in recent years in greater Minnesota, and there is growing diversity all across the state. So not just in urban and suburban regions, but all across the state. So how will the DFL win votes in greater Minnesota, especially in 2022?
I think one of the elements is showing up, and I've been doing that, and our caucus has been showing up, whether it's Farm Fest or whether it's events across the state. We know that greater Minnesota has had more issues in the farming community with the drought. So when we go to Farm Fest, we're going to ask farmers what they need from our state as a good partner. When we go to northern Minnesota, we're going to ask them what they think about mining, what they think about water quality. All those issues that we all care so much in the metro and those suburbs are the same issues that we see in the rural communities. We just have to go there and listen to them, what is particularly their issues and how we can partner with them. So we're going to do that, show up, talk to them, listen, not preach, and bring those ideas back to the Capitol to represent their interest.
Both you and the new Senate Majority Leader Jeremy Miller are parents to young children. You are both a generation younger than your predecessors. You both came to the Senate interested in collaboration. Senator Miller was a co-founder of the Purple Caucus, and when you got here, you joined the Purple Caucus. Is there a changing of the guard underway?
I sure think so. When I was first elected, I was asked whether I was old enough to vote. So that was back in 2012. I'm 41 years old right now. Jeremy Miller is just shy of 40, but we are both coming with a new perspective of how we see the world, how we were raised in our generation, and I think there's more hunger to get things done, and versus the divisiveness we've seen in politics. And it's good to bring diversity of thought and age, and the fact that we both have young children, that other people can see that they can have a political career in a political space. With young children, especially me as a mom, as a woman, we have the perception that we can't do it all, but we need a good team, and I think both Jeremy and I have that, and we're able to step up to our leadership roles today.
Have you noticed that there are differences in generations in terms of how you work in the political sphere?
Not just in generation, but also in background. We come from different sectors of the economy, whether you're a teacher, I'm a small business owner, an attorney, we have people who are have their own businesses. We bring a lot of diversity to this space, to this work, which is great. Generation is another factor, but it all eventually works out, and it's good to have that diversity. So I think we do bring differences, and that's a good thing.
Governor Walz has established, as of this week, a Governor's Council on Economic Expansion. Recommendations from this group will be due to the legislature before the coming session. The governor spoke of the mismatch between jobs and job seekers, and also said that the economic recovery is not treating all Minnesotans equally. What is needed, in your view, to help Minnesota's economy?
Well, the issue of not having the workers that we need for our workplace and for those jobs is a complex one. It's not just because of one factor. So we have to really unpack it and peel that onion, whether it's childcare, whether it's you need a better paying job, and $12 is not a sustainable living wage. We have to step up the game because it's becoming more expensive to get products and even food, to put food on the table. Families are struggling with more. Certainly with COVID, we've seen that families are taking on more for their children and for their elderly parents. So we have to understand that the economy has fundamentally changed, and we have to catch up to that. So I think one of it is the labor, the living wage, like I mentioned, but also issues of paid family leave that the Democrats have been really shepherding for a long time. I'm a small business owner. I like to give my employees benefits, but there's some challenges to doing that. So also, how do we get access to health care that we can all afford, including small business owners?
Senate Leader Miller has been very clear that public safety will be an important issue for Republicans in the coming legislative session. Where does the DFL stand on public safety issues?
Well, we've been really strong on public safety in the Senate. That's where the movement has been to get the Republicans to share the urgency to change and reform a lot of our policing practices. And that starts with licensing. We have the role to change how we license police, how we hold accountable training, and those things that have been really powerful that we've had support from law enforcement to change. We just need the will of the Republicans to do the right thing, to move and trust, and bring that trust back to our communities. It starts with accountability. We've funded law enforcement, and we also want those dollars to go to good use so that people in any community, whether it's Minneapolis, St. Paul, Edina, Minnesota, or Grand Rapids, that we all have those ability to have safe communities. And we know that there's been an uptick in crime. We know that we need to trust our people who are going to keep us safe, but we also have to bring community with us and have that part of the conversation of what solutions we want in those areas of our state.
Before we go, what are some of the other issues that the DFL will be working hard on now and into the coming legislative session?
Well, we know one of the main things right now is healthcare. Because of this COVID pandemic, we've known how disproportionately some communities have been targeted because they have had less access to healthcare. We all knew that. We just need to do something better for them. So I think those are issues that we're going to continue to push. Obviously, education is huge for the Democrats, and make sure that everybody has equitable access to education, to have the diversity they need to see in the classrooms, and the funding that they need to make sure that students and teachers are safe. But also mainly jobs. We all need safe jobs, sustainable jobs, and that's something that I'm really looking forward to working on.
Senate Minority Leader Melisa López Franzen, I want to thank you.
Thank you.
The state's highest court still meets occasionally in the magnificent chamber at the state capitol. Here's a look at some of the art and architectural features of this historic space from our series, The People's House. The Supreme Court chamber sits in the east wing of the Capitol building. Is it typical among state capitals, to your knowledge, to have a Supreme Court chamber within the Capitol complex?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty common edifice, or part of the building is to keep all three branches of government together. So a lot of capitals were designed for all three branches, the House, the Senate, the judicial, and of course the executive branch. And then over time, a lot of capitals moved the Supreme Courts out of their capitals to other buildings. And so that's, we still have our Supreme Court chamber here, but our state Supreme Court did move over to the Judicial Center in the 1990s. So that is a little bit of the same, but still there's a really strong historic presence in this chamber today.
What was the impetus for the move, and is this space still being used?
Yeah, this space is still part of that monthly meetings that the Supreme Court will have hearings here. So they will meet the first week in the historic chambers within the state capitol. The second week of their hearings they have or hold at the Judicial Center. So once again, it's an important part of their history and heritage to be a part of this building. And they still want to keep that presence here. And it is really a pretty spectacular space to have a court hearing. And that's, I think, an attribute to their willingness to still be a part of the state capitol building.
Every time I'm in this chamber, I'm always curious what is behind the curtain, and why did they design it with a curtain, which just makes people like me wonder what's behind it.
Yeah, it's part of just filling in that space behind the columns. There's a hallway and then a Supreme Court consultation or meeting room, and that's where after the hearings they've heard that morning are completed, that's where the justices will gather, talk about the court cases, or just have one of them assigned to write their opinion. Because each justice has to weigh in, write their opinion of what they've heard that day and what their decision should be based on the legal precedent or what the law is or interpretation of the law. So that's an important gathering space for them before and after their hearings.
As you sit in the chamber and look at the ceiling, there seems to be a lot of symbolic motifs in the design. Can you talk about what those mean?
Yeah, there's words written in Latin that says lex, which represents law. There's, once again, horticulture and products of Minnesota, so once again you're establishing the prosperity of the state. You know, it's all coming together to create good laws and interpretation of the laws in this room. And then you also have rod and bundles, which are rods or wooden sticks that are bound together, and so that represents unity and strength. So it's, you know, easy to break one stick, but if you had a whole bundle, it's hard to break that unity and that strength of government and the strength and power of law, which is being discussed each and every day here. The other thing that's really fascinating is the skylight. As long as I've been here, this is the first time we've actually had natural light coming through the skylight. So that was
that was a change from the renovation.
Right, that was an important part of this restoration of the chamber, was to open up the skylight to bring in the natural light once again, and it does make this room very much more dramatic, and it changes the whole effect of this space that we had never seen before.
A large part of Cass Gilbert's vision was art and the edification that comes from viewing art. There are 4 murals in this Supreme Court chamber. Can you talk about the meaning of each one of these murals? This is a really important part of understanding how this space is interpreted. It's huge murals done by John Lafarge, one of the great artists in America at that time. So there are different people portrayed, historical figures that are kind of telling you the story of where our laws came from. So right behind the justices who sit in the long bench, that's Moses. He's about ready to receive the 10 Commandments. That represents divine and moral law. Over to, if you're the viewer, to your left would be a large painting of Confucius. He's in a blue robe. He's looking at a scroll that's been written down that has precedent or decisions already made by other judges in courts. So we've talked about Moses, we've talked about Confucius, then we get to the painting depicting ancient Greece.
Yes, and that's Socrates, and so he is portrayed talking to friends of his. It's a scene right out of Plato's Republic where he's talking about justice and the rights of individuals in a democracy, which is, of course, first and foremost for any deliberation and justice or judge to, you know, always think of the rights of the individual, no matter what that situation might be. And then off to the other side of which would be to your right, if you're sitting in the chamber, is Count Raymond of Toulouse, France. It's a medieval setting, but he is standing between 2 disputing groups. So in front of him are leaders from the church. Behind him are city leaders. So there's a dispute that they're having to resolve. Instead of going to war or having violence, he's saying, come to me, I'll mediate, I'll help settle the conflicting interests so you don't have to, go to war to fight out who's going to be right or wrong.
And then, of course, as you leave the chamber, it says, where law ends, tyranny begins, which is a statement then about the importance of the legal system in our state.
Right, and that's, once again, it helps guide. The state constitution is the rules for the governing of the state of Minnesota, and the laws are what help make that state prosper or provide the rights of the individuals. And if you don't have the law, then you can have tyrants or people take over, make their own laws. And so, once again, the Supreme Court is a part of that balance of government, and what is voted upon and signed by the governor as a new law in with the House and the Senate and the governor having that say, the court ultimately has a final say if that law is valid or not through their interpretation. And that only gets challenged through the legal system, through the courts.
Join us again next week as we delve into more topics affecting Minnesotans. I'm Shannon Loehrke, and on behalf of all of us at Senate Media Services, thanks for watching.